Welcome, everyone, to the Thanksgiving welcome. Wishing You Well concert by the TBD Storytellers. We are the TBD Storytellers that include Ingrid Nixon, Antonio Hosha, Paul Strickland, Norm Brecky. Did I get that right, Norm? I want to make sure I got your name right. Ann Rutherford, Simon Brooks, Sheila Arnold, and I am Jeff Doyle. We are here today to celebrate that the year is almost over.
Thank God.
2020. It's the date. Oh my goodness. You know, in mere less than 40 days from now, it will be 2021. And sometime in 2021, we hope to be performing live in front of all of you. And we hope all of the other storytellers in the audience will be doing that.
Yeah, hallelujah. Yeah.
Until then, virtually, we are wishing you well. We do not really have an MC today. Each of us is going to introduce the other, and our first teller tonight is Ingrid Nixon. And I want everybody to give her a big round of applause. And I want to wish Ingrid and Kevin's whole family well from all of us, and we hope that you stay warm and happy up in Alaska. Ingrid, please delight us with one of your tales.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Woo-hoo. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. It's wonderful to have you here. So, I am 7 years old. And I am walking down the aisle at the Ben Franklin store in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And this Ben Franklin store is one of those big old stores that people tend to call a five and dime. But this store, you can get anything there, from plumbing supplies to bolts of fabric. And I have 50 cents in my pocket. And I am looking for the perfect gift for my mother for Mother's Day. A symbol of my love for her. So I stop and I consider a comb. It's a plastic comb, but it looks like it's made of tortoiseshell. It's very pretty. But I'm like, no, nah. And I continue walking. And I walk past the lunch counter, which is very quiet at this time in the afternoon. And, you know, at one end of the lunch counter, there's that glass case that has the rotating slices of pie, banana cream, lemon meringue, apple. And there are the two beverage dispensers, the ones that are endlessly churning beverages. One is orange, the other one is yellow. And then down at the far end of this red Formica lunch counter, there is this large cage that holds a real live myna bird. And this bird, it's black with an orange bill. And there is a sign on the cage that says, if you can get this bird to say hello, you can take it home. I think, a myna bird, a perfect gift for my mom. So I go up to the bird and I start, hello. Hello, 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 hello. The bird stays mum. And I realize that my mother and brother, who are somewhere else in the store, are probably going to want to go home at some point in time. So I continue on my mission. I drift over into the clothing section where they have clothes for kids, women, and men. And there are these white fluffy socks. They're very soft, but I'm like, oh, no. And then my eyes fall on this black vinyl coin purse. It's flat, it's rectangular, and painted on the side is this elaborate gold filigree with accents of blue and red. I open the gold clasp and look inside, and there are two side pockets and then a center section with a zipper. Now, this coin purse is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my price range. And so I buy it. And when I finally meet up with my brother and my mother, I have it there in a paper sack. And I secretly show it to my brother. and he approves. Well, as we drive home in our gray Pontiac station wagon, my brother and I are standing up in the back seat without our seatbelts. My mother is driving. And I am so excited about this coin purse that I decide I'm going to kind of tease my mom about it, get her curiosity up. So I start saying, well, Mom, I got you a Mother's Day present. I just decided to get you a comb. And then I look in the rearview mirror for her reaction. She smiles. And then I go, but no, then I changed my mind and I decided to get you some white fluffy socks. I look in the rearview mirror. She smiles. I'm like, no, then I decided that I would just get you a purse. And I look over at my brother who's like, and I suddenly realize I have totally spilled the beans, but I'm fast. So I go, no, I didn't get you a purse. So you're just going to have to wait until Mother's Day to find out what I got you. Well, on Mother's Day, my mom gets breakfast in bed. Runny eggs and cold toast festooned with chunks of butter. That's made by us kids. And hot black coffee made by my father. And after she has breakfast, she opens her gifts. And as she opens my present, I am leaning forward. I am almost vibrating with excitement. And she unwraps it and she holds that coin purse in her hand. And she admires the gold filigree with the accents of blue and red paint. And she opens the gold clasp and looks inside. And she is very pleased with this symbol of my love. And soon she takes her coins and puts it in the coin purse. And then I watch that coin purse disappear into her black Naugahyde handbag. And in the times that followed, when I would see her pull out that coin purse, I'd be like, oh, I got that for her. Symbol of my love. Well, time passed. Years. Decades. 5 decades. And when my mother was 89, her leaf broke off the tree of life and gently drifted down to the ground. And my siblings and I were tasked with clearing out my family's house. And in my mom's bedroom, in her bureau, in that top drawer next to her scarves and her pearls, was that black vinyl coin purse. And as I held it in my hand, the gold filigree with the accents of blue and red paint was just as beautiful as I had remembered. And I undid that gold clasp and I looked inside and I saw that the 2 side pockets were completely blown out. The seams were shot. I mean, it was just pressed vinyl. It was cheap. So as a coin purse, it was worthless. But yet all those years, my mom had opened that drawer and seen that coin purse sitting there, and she never threw it away. And yet again, I was reminded how it seemed as though all the particles in my universe had just blown apart. And then they had reassembled in a way that they looked the same, but everything was profoundly different, including that coin purse, because it was no longer a symbol of of my love for her, but rather it was a symbol of her love for me.
Very nice.
Excellent.
No,
Wow.
thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here, and warmest wishes to the holidays to all of you. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next teller, Antonio Hasha. Many of you know Antonio, and for those who do not, you are in for a great treat. But he is a man who brings together motion and the most eloquent language for wonderful stories. So, Antonio, I am wishing you well.
Hey, thank you so much, Ingrid. So good to be here with you all. What a lovely story. And here we go. Well, this story also starts with my mom because when I was 15 years old, my mom walked into the house and she had registered me to learn English as a second language. This is a house in the countryside of Brazil. When I was 15, she said, I signed you up for English and I hope it sticks. And it did. I loved learning English. It was like being in a playground of sounds, new words, and a lot of them similar to Portuguese. You won't believe how much Portuguese there is in English. I highly recommend, especially during this downtime, for all of you to take up a language. And don't expect yourself to master it, because have you mastered your first language? Really? Not really, right? Yeah. So you're always forever learning a new language. For example, here are some similarities between English and Portuguese. Words such as molar, your tooth, molar, is spelled the same. It means the same. Polar, cold polar, spells the same. It means the same. It's just pronounced slightly different. Solar, it's the same. And all three words have a word in common. Lar, L-A-R. The three last letters of each of those words spells home in Portuguese. Lar, home. We say lar doce lar, for home sweet home. And now my favorite one, and I hope you will never forget this one. Animal. Animal. Animal is spelled the same way, but we don't say animal in Portuguese. We say animal. Now check this out. Animal spelled backwards, it spells lâmina, which means blade in Portuguese. And guess what? Lâmina is also in English in the word laminate. Okay? Laminate? Yes, lamina. It's the same thing. A flat sheet that you laminate with. So word after word. So, and I was learning English mainly from British English. The school I was going to for language was this British school called Cultura Inglesa. And then when I got to Maine, I had to adapt, instead of saying, I'm going to phone you, I would say, I'll call you. Instead of I need a lift, I would say, I need a ride. And then the day came. Here I am, a storyteller in the middle of Nebraska, in the middle of January. And I learned a word I thought I knew all along, but I didn't. In Kearney, Nebraska, there is a museum over the highway that connects Omaha to Denver, Colorado. And this highway has a covered bridge. It looks like a covered bridge, but it's not really a covered bridge. And it's a museum, a pioneer museum. You enter on one side, and by the time you finish crossing this museum, you've learned a lot about the different parties that went through the River Platte to go out to the west. And here I am looking at these artifacts and different stories, different books, and I see the main piece in the middle of the museum. It's a state coach. And that's how I've been saying the whole time, a state coach. I never heard until then stage coach. I've always heard state coach because in those British books I would get, the Queen of England goes about on those beautiful parades on a state coach, not a stage coach. So I'm looking, I'm like, my goodness, it's a stage coach all along, and I've been saying state. And there is this relic right there. There is a stage coach driver. The horses are going, and there's a shotgun pointing at something. I'm like, this looks like a story. And there's a book open right by it. And I start reading. And sure enough, there's a story from the wild west of this man having to relocate a load of gold bars. He had to take gold from one side of the west to another. And he knew he was going to go deep into a canyon filled with thieves that would come and steal the gold. So he hired a shotgun to protect the gold and himself. And off they went. dust is rising, and they're approaching this canyon, right? Get ready! It's full of thieves in here! Full of thieves! Get the gun ready! And they descend into the canyon, and the sun stopped and following them, and it got very dark in there. Shadows moving, spiders crawling. A eagle crossed the sky when all of a sudden they came around a bend in the canyon, and there standing on the rock is a thief, and he pulled the reins. Shoot him! Shoot him! Otherwise he's going to kill us both and steal the gold. Shoot him! I can't even see the whites of his eyes. He's only this big. I'm gonna miss for sure. All right, okay then, all right. Horses are going wild around. They come another bend. I mean, I couldn't get my eyes off of this story. And they come another bend of the canyon. And now is the thief. It's about this big. Shoot him, otherwise he's gonna shoot us both and steal the gold. Shoot him. I can't. He's only this big. I don't even see the whites of his eyes. I'm going to miss for sure. What kind of an aim do you have? And they come around, bend after bend, and the thief gets getting bigger and bigger. And finally, they come around the final bend, and there he is, standing on the rock. Shoot him! Shoot him! Even I can see the whites of his eyes. Shoot him! Shoot him! I can't! What do you mean you can't? Even I can do this. I can't. Why not? Because I've known him since he was this big. But listen, that was the day I truly learned how to say stage coach the right way. But the story does not end there. In a most bizarre of coincidences, the museum followed me all the way to evening. How? I had the evening off from the festival, and I decided to see a new movie featuring Jack Nicholson. So I go to the movie to watch about Smitch. And I'm watching the movie the same day I paid a visit to that Pioneer Museum in Kearney, Nebraska. And Jack Nicholson plays a character who works in Omaha, Nebraska. And during the movie, he drives to Denver, Colorado on the same road where the museum is located. And he is driving, and I'm seeing Jack Nicholson's characters watch the museum from the outside, and he's filled with curiosity. He pulls the car into the parking lot and visits the museum. So that day, I go to the museum twice. I mean, talking about double. And that's the end of that one. All right. So I hope you learn at least a few words. You won't imagine how much fun, if you don't speak a second language, how much fun it is to try a few words. So there are lots of things available online. And now, without any further ado, our next guest, you are in for a treat. Yes, we have Paul Strickland. Paul Strickland is a humorist. He can take you to the wilds of absurd and to the depths of poetic narrative, right into your heart. He plays the guitar, he sings, he has toured North America from coast to coast across Canada and the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves. Paul Strickland. All right. Wishing you well, my dear. Wishing you well. Thank you.
Thanks, Antonio. And thank you all for being here. This is such an honor to get a chance to be here with Chosen Family. It's such an important thing, Chosen Family, especially in this time that we're living in. I have some Chosen Family right now. You can see that I have a picture of these two bananas that are conjoined twins in the background. Very, very excited to showcase them for tonight's performance. whenever we were talking about what to do for this show, and the topic of wishing you well came up, the first people I thought of were my Aunt True and my Uncle Faltz. My Aunt True and Uncle Faltz, for those of you who don't know, they live in a trailer park called Big Fib Trailer Park Cul-de-sac. It's a trailer park in the shape of a giant cul-de-sac in a town called Big Fib, which is way down south of here. It's down there off the coast of Factual. One time, I said to Uncle Faltz, I asked him, why is it called Big Fib Trailer Park Cul-de-sac? And Uncle Faltz said, well, boy, it is a trailer park that's in the shape of a cul-de-sac in a town called Big Fib. Where'd you go to school? Big Fib is a curiously creative and wonderful place. And so I should never be surprised at anything that happens there. I was actually, Antonio, I was learning a little bit of French recently. And I found out that cul-de-sac in French literally means bottom of the bag. So I called Uncle Faltz to tell him cul-de-sac in French literally means bottom of the bag. And Uncle Faltz said, I thought it meant turn around or stay. Over. He says over because he thinks his cordless phone works like a walkie-talkie. I said, Uncle Faltz, you don't have to say over after every time you're done talking. And then there was this long pause. I said, hello? He goes, didn't know you was done talking. Over. And then he just started into his story. The story that I want to share with y'all today, it's called The Origin of Trailer Parks. Uncle Faltz started, he said, many, many moons ago. And then Aunt True interrupted him. She said, honey, they ain't been but one moon, Faltz, which I know sounds a little crazy, but it's them. So it is. Many, many moons ago, or under the same moon a long time ago, there was only one park. And all the parks that we have today have their origin, their genesis in what we now know of as Pangea Park, which it's a terrible name for a park. I agree with you. I wouldn't want to walk my child or carry my dog around in a place called Pangea, but that ain't the point. The point is, all the parks that we have today lived at one point together in perfect peace and harmony. What does that mean? That means that Theme Park and Water Park lived right next door. They shared a fence line with Dog Walking Park and Trailer. That is, until the Great Asunder descended. When the Great Asunder descended, it started brainwashing some of those different types of parks. Small wars broke out for petty reasons. You ask Uncle Faltz about it and he'll tell you, he'll say, listen here, at one point, certain factions of Water and Theme got together, started enacting psychological warfare on dog walking. That's how joggers got created. The world's most annoying weapon, you ask me, with all them sweaty bits and the heavy breathing and things coming out their ears. What are they listening to? I don't trust them. Trailer Park took one look at a jogger, said, I think nope, and rolled. And listen, boy, listen, if trailers weren't meant to flee, why did the great manufacturer give them wheels? They rolled and they rolled, searching for a new identity, gradually developing the theory that if they had just stayed to fight, if trailer parks had just stayed to fight, they might still have a place among all those fancier types of parks. And that's why, to this day, people think trailer park folk will just throw off a stained white t-shirt and fight you for no reason. Y'all, it's just part of our mythology. Now, the group of trailers, they got all the way down south to Big Fib. They still felt the Great Asunder breathing down their neck. And that's why they circled up like a bunch of Western wagons and got ready to fight. And they're still there today, friends, just up on blocks, fearful and suspicious of new ideas. Because new ideas just might be the Great Asunder's novel way of infecting their mind. Now, how did that trailer park end up in the shape of a cul-de-sac? Well, when Uncle Faltz was still 5 years old, the way the kids would play back in those days, a long, long time ago now, they just run in circles all day, just running in circles, just practicing to be NASCAR fans. They go just running in circles, just running until One night, miraculously, they say, two of those trailers just opened themselves up to the rest of the world. And that's important, you see, because now the kids run and play in the same way. They run in circles, but now they stop at that opening of those two trailers, and they look out into the rest of the world like it's a portal into a new dimension. And that gives those kids a chance to imagine things. That gives those kids a chance to dream. What could be more miraculous than that, friends? That's the thing about Big Fib Trailer Park Cul-de-sac. You can enter it anytime you like, but in order to leave, you got to go out the way you came. And what does that mean? That means anytime you visit my Aunt True and Uncle False, the first thing you got to do before you re-enter your world is revisit somewhere you've already been. Aunt True and Uncle False are strange people, living among even stranger people. But aren't we all a little strange as people? That's the thing. When the peculiar becomes familiar and safe, that's when you know that you love. I remember 8 or 9 years ago now when I went to visit him. I walked in the trailer. Aunt True took one look at me and she said, "Boy, you've lost too much weight. What is her name?" And then she walked into the kitchen and she poured a bunch of peas into a bowl that was cracked with an actual Band-Aid over the crack. When I triangulate Aunt True's lack of tact and Uncle False's weird wit with the smell of peas in a bowl that is cracked with an actual Band-Aid over it, friends, I know what I have found. It is one set of coordinates for Big Fib Trailer Park Cul-de-sac, the place I will always think of as home.
Sister Vine, that was wonderful.
Thank you all so much.
That was excellent, dude.
Wow.
Thanks for coming with me to my family, y'all. That's fun.
Yeah.
We love your family, Paul.
Thank you so much. What a cool event this is, and what an honor for me to get to introduce this next teller. I feel like as a proper Southern eccentric who's pretty new to the storytelling world, to have the TBD Storyteller group embrace me with open arms like they have has been really the highlight of this year for me in so many ways. And not just because 2020 has sucked. It's because it's in any year, I really just feel like I have found a new family here. And one of those members that has been so kind to me, one of the kindest people I have ever met, and also a person who's in touch. He's so in touch with the stories that he tells. His excitement about the art of storytelling compels you to listen even closer to his stories. Please, right now, give a warm round of applause to my friend, Norm Brecky. Norm, wishing you well.
Ooh, well, thank you. That's my best well wish ever, maybe. I don't know. Thank you so much, Paul. I tell you, you're right. This is not just has not just been a good thing for 2020. It has been. Feel so fortunate to be a part of this group. And you know, every month when we meet, not just when we meet to do these shows, but when we meet, it feels like a pep talk. Whether or not I think I need one at the time, I get a little pep talk when we talk. And I don't know, that's an important thing. And, you know, we get those kind of talks from different kinds of people. There's, you know, teachers and coaches and, you know, parents and grandparents, family. And then, you know, sometimes it comes in different kind of forms, like chosen family. And sometimes it's just you know, you get a pep talk in a way, or encouragement from somebody who just reminds you of what you said you wanted to do. And that kind of brought me to this song. I wrote the song a few years ago, and this is kind of a little short thing about how I wrote the song, and now and then I'll play it for you. So a few years ago, I was in the Folk Life Festival up in Seattle, and I've been in it a lot of times. And I was done with the whole gig, and I was so excited. I was back at school the next Tuesday after, and I was telling my group of friends at lunch about how much fun it had been, and that I had done an original song with my set, and that the best thing about it was no one knew that it wasn't an old song. That was a folk song. They thought it was a real old folk song, which I thought was the best compliment you could possibly get. So I said, I think I'd like to do that again next year. And so I left the lunch and went back to teaching, and went back to life. And about 2 weeks before, almost a year goes by, and there's 2 weeks before the Folk Life Festival, and I haven't written the song. I've forgotten all about it. And I'm in my room after school, and my friend, she comes by and she just kind of pops her head in. She goes, "Hey, you're in the Folk Life Festival again. Are you going to do an original song again?" And I went, maybe. And she walks away, and I'm like, "Oh man, I totally forgot about that. I really did want to do that, but 2 weeks. I mean, can I even do that? I don't know." And at that point, I kind of looked up at my bulletin board, and up on my bulletin board, there was a homemade button. And let me show it for a minute here. WWVD. What would Vern do? My brother Vern had died about, maybe 5 years before that. And everybody had worn that at his funeral. He was the kind of guy that was always giving people advice and was able to pick you up when you were down, or tell you what you ought to do. He had lots of opinions, and he liked to share them. So I thought, now, what would Vern do? What would Vern say? And he'd say, "Get started, Norm." So I picked up my guitar, and I started strumming and trying to figure out some chords, that sounded okay together. And then I looked out in the playground, and it was after school, and there was Rusty. Rusty was this guy, a little kid, 9 years old, but really short. And I never had him in class, but I did have him, and I coached him in junior football. And now Rusty was a good kid, a nice kid. He liked football, but he did not want to play football. What he wanted to do was dig holes. Any break that we got in practice, Rusty would dig a hole. And I'd go over to him and I'd say, "Rusty, you can't dig holes on the field. You should find someplace else. Somebody's going to get hurt." And he'd say, "Coach, it's just a little hole, Coach." Well, that reminded me of this riddle that I had just heard not too long before, and that kind of had struck me. And the riddle said, if it takes 6 strong men 6 days to dig a hole, how long would it take you to dig half a hole? I thought, that's really great. The answer is, you can't dig half a hole. The minute you've dug anything, there's a hole there. It might not be a very big hole, but you've done something, even just by starting. That seems so positive to me. I wrote it down. This was like a pep talk. And I thought, well, what else did Vern say? And he said, you can't make a life out of what you're going to do. It's what you do that counts. Well, I wrote that down. And then what else did he say? He said, let me think, there's a lot of things in life that we want to change and that we should try to change. But one thing you can't change, Norm, that's your past. Okay, I wrote that down. And then I went all around the school writing those platitudes and positive things all over, because they're in posters all around any elementary school. And I changed them around, and I put these chords to them, and put them to this song, and reworded it a little bit. And what I think of it as, "Dig Me Half a Hole," the song is a pep talk to myself. And hopefully it'll be a pep talk for you too, that might give you the oomph to get through these difficult holiday season. So here we go. Dig me half a hole, brother, dig me half a hole. Dig me half a hole, sister, dig me half a hole. They say it takes 6 strong men 6 days to dig a hole. How long will it take you to dig me half a hole? 'Cause almost everything you know, it starts from nothing big. When you're out of things to do, well, you might as well just dig. Dig me half a hole, brother, dig me half a hole. Dig me half a hole, sister, dig me half a hole. Secret to a rich life is start, commence, begin. You have to have been something big to be a great has-been. You cannot build a future on what you say you'll do. All is said and done, my friend, well, action makes it true. Mr. Campbell says to follow your own bliss. Doors will open up for you and happiness can't miss. Dig me half a hole, brother, dig me half a hole. Dig me half a hole, sister, dig me half a hole. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step. Secret key to being great is stepping with some pep. 'Cause you can't make a new beginning, no use pretending. But anyone can start from now to make a new ending. Mr. Campbell says to follow your own bliss. Doors will open up for you and happiness can't miss. Dig me half a hole, brother, dig me half a hole. Dig me half a hole, sister, dig me half a hole. All right. I know this is all in your heads now, and if you'd like to sing along, which I'd love to have you do, please mute. Let's go. Dig me half a hole, brother, dig me half a hole. Dig me half a hole, sister, dig me half a hole.
Awesome. That was awesome.
That was so good. Noel.
That was
So,
great.
That was so great.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, we are
Funny fellow.
going to have a short intermission now. I have a slideshow. You may want to take out some paper and start writing the things down, but I'm also going to put the information in the chat. But you get to see a fancy slideshow and there's some music on. So enjoy about 4 minutes of a break, counting the last couple of seconds just then. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce somebody that I know well, really, I mean, better than almost anybody, except for one person who's here, and that's my daughter Guinevere, who's here too. She'd probably be embarrassed that I was actually mentioning her, but so it is my my pleasure to introduce my wife, Ann Rutherford. Now, wishing her well is kind of like wishing me well as well. So I feel a little bad about it in some ways, but I mean, she's already so wonderful. She is a terrific storyteller. She is a funny person and she knows it. And she luckily has the job of giving people that love in the form of a laugh very often, and especially me. I hope that her next year is better than this one, and we're hoping for a vaccine. I know that. So anyway, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ann Rutherford to the stage here. If we can get her highlighted. Someone please help Norman.
I got it.
Thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you, Norm. What a great group of people to be a part of. And I include our audience as well as our tellers. I mean, this is just feels wonderful. So there's a story I've always loved. It's about a young woman who comes home from college and she wants to learn how to make the family ham recipe. So she asks her mom, and her mom says, well, you're just going to have to come watch me do it because your grandmother never wrote it down. She says, okay. So the next morning, the young girl's in the kitchen. She's watching her mother taking notes on her phone, driving her mother crazy. And so she gets the whole ham basted and prepared. And then just before her mother puts the ham in the roasting pan, she puts it on the cutting board and chops about 2 inches off either end of the ham. And the young girl's, okay, now mom, why do you do that? I don't know. Her mother said, your grandma did it that way. That's how I do it. Ask your grandma. She'll be here tonight. So that night, the family gathers. Girl goes over. She says, Grandma, Mom showed me how to make your family ham recipe. Oh, that's nice, dear. But now, Grandma, I have one question. At the end, Mom chopped a little bit off each end of the ham, and I was just wondering why you do that. Is it like to make it more moist, or does it absorb more flavor? And her grandmother at this point has just started to laugh. When I was just married, her grandmother said, the only roasting pan I had was about this big. I had to chop the ends off everything to make it fit in that roasting pan. Well, my grandmother, Naomi Nolte Rutherford, her roasts were so tender you could eat them with a spoon. She had a stove that the rear burner of her stove was a deep well. It was like a built-in crock pot. So everything came out just so tender. She was a wonderful cook. I grew up in the Susquehanna Valley in Pennsylvania, and that's Pennsylvania Dutch country. And that's the way my grandmother cooked. Chicken corn soup, meatloaf with a whole hard-boiled egg in the center, sour cherry pie. Oh, but even the simple things that she made were delicious. Her tuna fish salad for a sandwich, I have never tasted better. It just lives in my memory. Even the apples, she would give me apples as a snack often, but she wouldn't prepare them like anybody else. She wouldn't cut them into little crescents like most people do. She would cut them into rounds. So you would see the red skin of the apple, the white flesh, and a starburst of seeds in the center. And I would sit on a high stool at her kitchen table, and she would be cooking at the counter. I would pick up those apples and I would eat them down to the starburst. Then on the china plate that she gave me the apples on, I would move the starbursts around and make constellations with my apple full of stars, because I loved astronomy. My dad would take me to the planetarium and we'd sit in the darkened room and look up, and they'd show the stars and the constellations with all the lines linking the stars in great detail. And then Dad and I would go out into the backyard with our star chart and look up. Like, Dad, do you think that's the Great Bear? He said, I don't know, it could be. I said, well, there's the Big Dipper. That's Orion. Thank goodness for Orion's belt. You could always identify Orion. The rest of it was a little more difficult to make out. So I loved making my own constellations with my starbursts on my grandmother's china plate. And I loved watching her cook. She was always so elegant. She had a great array of dress aprons that she would wear with ruffles and seasonal themes. And she always wore earrings. Even at 7 in the morning, she'd be down there making something for breakfast with her earrings on. Now, after she died, my mother told me that my grandmother always thought her earlobes were too big, and that's why she always wore earrings. But I just thought she was glamorous. I learned a little bit more about her after she died from my mother. I had known that my grandmother's own mother had died when she was a little girl, but my mom told me that when her mother, my grandmother's mother, was Protestant and her dad was Catholic, and their families had been bitterly opposed to the marriage. So when my grandmother's mother died, they asked her and her brother to choose whether they wanted to go with her father or stay with her mother's sister. And her brother went with her father, and my grandmother was only 4. So she said she wanted to stay with her aunt, with her mother's sister. And my grandmother told my mom that she remembered her father coming to visit neighbors on the other side of the double brownstone that they lived in. And she could hear her father's voice through the wall, but he never spoke directly to her again. She met my grandfather and married him, and moved 3.5 miles up the Susquehanna River from the little town of Columbia, where she'd grown up, to the even littler town of Marietta, where I grew up, my dad grew up. And it was only 3.5 miles, but it might as well have been going to another country, because my mom told me she didn't think my grandmother ever felt like she fit in in Marietta. And I can believe that because I was born and raised in Marietta, and they never made me feel like I fit in either. It's a tough crowd. At my grandmother's funeral, a little old lady came up to me and she said, "Oh, now I didn't know you as a child. No, I'm new here. We've just been here 25 years." And I thought, yeah, they never let you forget it, do they? So I think, she poured herself into her family. My dad, Henry, and the twins, Eddie and Nomi. She taught school. She had gone to college. My grandmother, pretty unusual for somebody of her generation, a woman. And she taught school. And I go back to visit my aunt every year that I can. And last time I went back, somebody came up to me on the street and said, "I had your grandmother as my third grade teacher, and she was the kindest teacher I have ever had." And she cooked. I think she poured a lot. I know she poured a lot of love into that cooking. And my grandfather died when he was 65, died very suddenly. He just retired and he died of a cerebral aneurysm, a stroke. My grandmother learned how to write a check. She learned how to drive a car. She wrote a check to buy herself a very nice car. And, she went on. And over the next couple of years, my dad and my uncle both died of the same kind of aneurysm. It was hereditary. So the women were left and we went on because that's what you do. But it was a little bit like Camelot after the round table had been dissolved. And I don't know if it was because we didn't want to dwell too much on what might have been, that we never talked much about the past. So I don't know many stories. I did ask my grandmother once, though. We were sitting together watching TV. I was reading a book about the 1920s. I'm crazy about the 1920s. I really wish I could have been a flapper. So I'm reading about the 1920s, and I suddenly put it together that my grandmother would have been a young woman in the 1920s. So I looked over at her and I said, "Grandmother, did you ever dance the Charleston?" She was in her upper 80s at this point. She got up from her rocking chair, put her hands on her knees, and started to dance the Charleston right there in the TV room. When I went to college, as I mentioned, she herself had gone to college. When I went to college, she gave me her raccoon skin fur coat and a cocktail shaker. In fact, this cocktail shaker. She evidently felt like these were the essentials for college life. Now, I would have loved to hear some of those stories. I have her recipes, but I can't cook with them very well because they're her handwritten recipes, but they say things like add enough flour or cook until done. And I never cooked with her. I just watched her. But about 10 years ago, about 10 years after she died, I was getting ready for guests coming over for dinner and I was running late. So I was trying to get the salad made and I was going to put an apple in the salad, threw an apple on the cutting board and it fell over on its side. And I just took my carving knife and whapped it down the middle. It split open into two halves with two starbursts of seeds. That's how you did it. My grandmother and I had a moment. And ever after that, right around this time of year, because her birthday always fell right around Thanksgiving. In fact, her birthday is this very day, November 24th. So every year around this time, I try to go to the store and get the reddest apple I can find, cut it into rounds like she used to do, put it on one of the china plates that I inherited, sit and remember my grandmother, Naomi Nolte Rutherford, as I eat my apple full of stars. Thank you. Such a joy and a pleasure to be able to share that.
Thank you.
So it really was a wonderful coincidence that this show happened on her birthday. It gave me a great reason to really work that story. And I really want to thank my TBD colleagues because I got a lot of very great kind of wisdom and advice on working that story through. That's one of the huge benefits that we've been for each other, I think, is a sounding boards and just a great safe place to bring out story. And one of the people who is quick to be part of that sounding board is the next storyteller that I get to introduce, which is the wonderful Simon Brooks. And I knew Simon because he and I had been able to be in a couple different festivals, or at least at festivals together or performing together. But it's been so fun to get to know him more, over the course of working with this group. And one of the things I said about Simon, one of the first times I emceed and he was telling here, is that I really think if Simon were born a couple hundred years ago, he would be riding around the countryside on a cart telling people stories, because it just feels like that is what you are born to do, Simon.
Thanks, Sam.
So I really wish for you, always, but in the coming year, I really wish for you every chance to just deepen your craft and just explore and tell the kind of stories that you that just bring you joy in your mind and your body and your spirit. And we will benefit from that because we will get to hear them. So please give us a story. Wishing you well, Simon Brooks.
Thanks, Sam. Wishing you well as well.
Thank you.
It really is a great group of people that we get to work with. It's quite phenomenal. And I've got to wipe a tear away now. Oh, thanks. So this story is it's what I do. It's personal. It's not a personal story. It's a folk and fairy tale. And it comes, I'm going to show you this picture. I'm going to show you this at the beginning, because when I lived in London for a while, I would come up and I would see this beautiful old farm. It's been rebuilt, but it's a very, very, very old farm. And on the top of the hill in the background, there's this one oak tree, and there's a couple of stumps next to it. And so I really believe that this is where this story comes from. Many, many moons ago, there was once a farmer who had 3 sons. And every Midsummer's Eve, they would gather marigolds, and they would take them up onto the hill behind the house, behind the farmhouse, and lay these marigolds beneath the 3 green sisters. The farmer called these beautiful oak trees, these massive oak trees that were at the top of the hill, the 3 green sisters. And the reason why they went up there to lay these flowers in gratitude around the base of the trees was because they wanted to say thanks for the shade that the trees gave them in the summer, and the thick branches. Thanks for those branches for protecting them from the wind in the winter. Every single year they would do this on Midsummer's Eve. And the farmer grew older and older. And he knew that he was not going to be in this world for much longer. So he called his sons in and asked them to promise that they would continue to go up onto the hill and place those flowers around the base of the 3 green sisters. And they all agreed. And then the farmer died. The eldest son took over the farm, and he loved being in charge. He'd been in charge for quite a while, but now he was the only person in charge, and he loved it. Now, as the year moved slowly around, the youngest brother said, "We should go and gather the flowers to take up onto the hill to celebrate the 3 green sisters." And the eldest brother said, No. That was superstitious nonsense. We don't need to do that. In fact, I'm thinking of taking one of those trees down to use as boards for the barn. There's a few holes in the side. But we have other trees that we could use to do that. We don't have to take one of the sisters down. This is my farm. I'm in charge now. And the oldest brother made his way up to the top of the hill and with an axe and saw cut one of those trees down. This is not altogether a happy story at this particular point. For when the tree fell, as the wood strained and split, it cried out, almost sounding like a woman's voice crying out. And one of the branches, when it hit the ground, snapped, and it went flying through the air, and it struck the eldest brother, and he was no more. The middle brother became in charge of the farm. Now, he being middle brother, he'd never been in charge of anything because it was always his big brother or his dad, and he was never spoiled like the youngest brother. So he loved being in charge of that farm. He wore that mantle well, and he ran the farm well. And a year came round, and the youngest brother again said, we should go and gather marigolds and put them at the bottom of the trees. No. Like our brother said, it's just superstitious. We don't need to do that. But our father said that we should do it, and we promised him. But it's my farm now, and we'll do whatever. I'll take the flowers up. If you go anywhere near those trees, against my word, I will throw you from this farm with nothing but the clothes on your back. In fact, I'm going to take one of those trees down to make some posts. But we have other trees that could make much better posts than the oak trees. It's my farm. I'll do what I want. And he did. Axe and saw at the top, and the tree came down, and as it fell, it screamed. And the same thing happened with him as the eldest brother. And the youngest brother took over the farm. He didn't really want to take it over without his brothers, but there was nothing left for it. He worked the farm well, and every Midsummer's Eve, he would take the flowers up to that one green sister that still remained standing. And he'd even set the marigolds around the two stumps of the other two green sisters. And he met a woman that he loved, and they got married. And he showed her the ritual that he had every Midsummer's Eve, taking those flowers up and placing them around the trees and the tree stumps. And they had kids, and they would take the kids up. And the kids did it, and the grandkids did it, and the children of the grandkids did it. And one of the trips, when I was coming back up from London, and I passed that intersection, I looked down on that old house, and I looked across at the hill with that one tree left, with the two stumps, what looks like the two stumps on the next to it. I could have sworn that I saw the colors of marigolds around the base of those trees, for it was Midsummer's Eve. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Quite good. Quite
Beautiful.
Quite good. Thank you.
good.
Delightful.
I'm glad it was quite good. I'll try better next time. This is the feedback we give each other. That was quite good, Simon. Nice. Sheila Arnold. I met Sheila Arnold years ago, and I was thrilled to meet her. And we also became quite good friends.
Quite good. Quite
Good friends. And she has been a big support for me, and as well as a lot of other storytellers. And she's just phenomenal. She's just a great human being. She works for all of our community of storytellers. She works for the community outside of the storytellers, and she works really, really hard. And I wish not just her well, but I also wish she'd take a break to look after herself. And I know that I'm hoping that she's going to be spending time with her family over this holiday season. And I'm very, very happy to welcome the wonderful Miss Sheila Arnold. Thank you, Sheila. Woo! Woo!
All right. Ooh, wow. I'm too red now. Lord, I can't figure out what I'm going to be here. I was like, okay. That's a little better. Okay. Woo, I was really red. I was really red. Okay. First, you all need to know something. All these wonderful people who showed up, not TBD folks, but you need to know that I am the black sheep of this family. And it's not because of the color of my skin. It is truly because I never make it to a TBD meeting. I think I've been to half of a meeting one time at some point and then had to back out, whatever. I've never been to a meeting. And they still let me show up. What is that all about? So I don't know.
Love you.
I'm grateful.
That's why.
Huh?
We love you. That's why.
No, you're so sweet. And so I've always flummoxed when they say, Sheila, we want you to be in something. I'm like, I never come, I'm just, so that's part of being too busy, but I am honored because these are my friends, and they always honor me to let me be a part of it, but I'm always delighted to be with their stories and around their stories. They inspire me so much. So thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on the outside looking in most of the time, but to still be there. I am going to go spend Thanksgiving with my mom and my dad and not with my son, because my son is going with his girlfriend. I have a grandchild going to be coming in March. And so the two of them are going to go see the girlfriend's parents. And then the plan was, in his head, was they were going to see the girlfriend's parents, pick up a meal, and then come hang out in our family. And I was like, ain't happening. Love you. Don't want to see you. So they're going to pick up food and hang out over there. And I'll just see, which is wonderful. And I'll see my father and my stepmom, Vera, and then my sister will be coming up, and we'll wear a mask around her. So that's wonderful. And we'll be around the dining room table. The dining room table in my family is where everything has happened. Since the time I was a little girl, we sat at the dining room table. We never had TV trays or sit before the television. No, we always sat at the dining room table. And there at the table, even as little girls, and there were 3 of us, we would watch my mom and dad as they would tell stories from one side or the other, commenting and responding and asking about the day. And when we got into school, then our parents would begin to turn to us and say, so how was your day? What did you learn today? Unlike children of today, we were not allowed to give the one-word answer of nothing, no, didn't learn anything. We had to come up with the answer because they would just look at you and expect an answer. And you would sit at the table all night if you didn't have an answer. And so we learned to tell stories really quickly. And we all did, except for my middle sister, who couldn't have a moment to talk between my parents and me and my youngest sister. But we loved that dining room table. And that dining room table was where whoever became a part of our family, and I'll say that again, whoever became a part of our family sat at that table and heard the stories and was brought in. And there were a lot of people that became a part of our table. The boyfriends that each one of us girls had over the years, that would change like the revolving doors they were. The family that we adopted in that knew nothing more than always having been at our table. Aunt Jean would come to our table. She was adopted by my mother, basically, and they decided they were sisters, that Aunt Jean was the older sister, and she came to our table, and then we would have Christmas presents with her, and she was delightful because she had drunk eggnog at breakfast on Christmas, and then we opened presents, and she would forget whose present was for each person, and because she didn't put the names on them, you just had to open it up, figure it out, and then figure out if it's the right or wrong one. It was wonderful. We loved Aunt Jean. She was part of our family, part of the table of stories. And then came Jasmine. Jasmine became an adopted granddaughter to my parents. And since she needed an adopted mom, I became that person. And she came to our table. You see, my son had grown up around that table too, so he always understood the stories, that you hang around for the stories, particularly at Thanksgiving. And so when she was at the table for the first times, Jasmine thought it was rather strange. She was from New York City, and her dining room table consisted of a tray table and a television. And sometimes somebody might be in the same room, but usually watching the television set with her. And so she came to her first Thanksgiving. She was attending Hampton University, one of the finest HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities in the country. And that's right down the street from our house here in Hampton, Virginia, or my parents' house in Virginia. So she came over for that first Thanksgiving, and actually we took that one all the way down to Georgia, and we brought her with us. And we all started talking and eating around the table, big, huge meals. I mean, when we eat Thanksgiving, we have everything. I won't even go into the details of how much food we have on the table. And so she ate quickly. And then she got ready to get up, and I said, oh, no, baby, no, baby. We don't get up from the table yet. Well, then what do? We talk. Okay. So she sat at the table and promptly took out her phone. And I said, oh, no, baby, no, baby. You don't get to do the phone thing either. You know, phone is only used to back up stories or to help people have memory, you know, who have memory loss, come back to life. So, but no, we don't do phone. So what do? We do stories. I just sit here and listen to stories. Yes. So she rolled her eyes, put her phone away, and for 20 excruciating minutes, she heard stories. You could tell they were excruciating because she was tapping her feet and rolling her eyes and kind of, oh, her thing was sagging. She'd look at her phone and it was excruciating for all of us to watch her for the 20 minutes. And then after 20 minutes, I said, you can go now. Oh, thank you. And she left. And I could hear her on the phone. Those people made me sit at the table while they were telling stories. And so it was. We had family at the table. 2 years later, she was a junior in high school, and we were having Thanksgiving dinner, this time at my mom and dad's house. And she's sitting at the table, and she had finished all of her food, but she just sat there. She'd been at a few dining room tables now.
Mm.
Then all of a sudden she said, could I tell a story? We all turned in our seats and we looked at her and, yeah, my Uncle Cosmo, yeah, girl, go ahead, tell a story. And she told a delightful and funny story about government cheese, which was quite funny. And then about then a slight little story to add on to that about adding in extra booty to yourself and adding in something that would give you more of that. It was all new news to us at the table. We're like, oh, okay. But it was hilarious. And we all laughed and we laughed. And she looked at us around the table. And I looked at her and I knew she had come home to the dining room table. It was 2 weeks ago in this year, 2020, when my grandson was 9 years old and sitting at the head of the dining room table. He didn't get to be a part of our lives until he was 3 years old. So he's also had to see what the dining room table is about. And so on his birthday, with his great grandfather making him the steak that he's learned to love at that table, he was sitting and listening, and we were all talking and chatting at that table. And then we're sitting and talking about Christmas and who went to go find the presents when their parents put them out, and who went to go see who would parents that had to stay up late at night to make the presents. And we're talking about this, and all of a sudden he says, you know, I went to open presents early one day. I smiled a little bit. I went to my mom and I asked her, can we open the presents? And it was Christmas. And she said yes. And we went downstairs and I told my brother and we opened presents. And then when my mom came down, she said, what is wrong with you? And like, she didn't want us to open presents. But, you know, I told her, I asked you if you want us to open presents. She might have been sleeping when I asked her. And I thought I heard her say yes. So I went downstairs to open presents with my brother. And we did exactly what all of you did. Laughed out loud. And my son looked at me and I looked at my son. And then I looked at my grandson and I remembered Jasmine and I remembered all the days at the table. And I said, Brooklyn, you told your first dining room table story. And his smile was from ear to ear because he was at home.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
May I just say this last word as you go, and sometimes some of us will not be at dining room tables with the people that we love. Hopefully you'll be able to call them, you'll be able to Zoom with them, but if nothing else, tell stories. Tell stories far and wide and listen to each other. We've had enough of just being apart from each other through all kinds of other stuff. It'd be great just to tell stories and listen. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm supposed to introduce somebody. Yeah. This is what happens when you don't go to the meeting or read the emails. Or yes. So the man who put this all together, that brought TBD into existence, who had the idea in his head that he wanted to gather a bunch of storytellers from all kinds of walks of life and types of storytelling, is Jeff Doyle. And Jeff Doyle has made this work. He has truly been our heartbeat in so many ways. He has not given up on any of us and always pushes us to do the next thing and to really try and get out there. I thank you, Jeff, for letting me be a part of this and for gathering all of us together as an inspiration. Thanks. And let's listen to Jeff Doyle.
Thank you, Sheila. Wonderful story about that kitchen table. I have to say it's been a long tradition in our family as well. You are not getting a pole barn, exclaimed Colleen after we moved into our house 25 years ago. Besides, you can't afford one. Well, she was right, but the neighborhood we moved into was perfect. Everyone had a 2-acre lot, and the neighborhood association allowed outbuildings. For those of you who don't know, a pole barn is a farm utility building built with treated lumber and metal siding. They come in all different shapes and sizes and colors. They are primarily a man's domain, and I wanted one. I knew it was going to take some time to convince Colleen, but I thought I was up to the task because I had pole barn dreams. I mean, I had even gone to the lumber yard and gotten the 52-page color brochure. I was leafing through it. I picked out the summer set model, 24 feet by 30 feet. It was going to be perfect for my workshop. I wanted to be Norm from the New Yankee Workshop. That man can make anything. And I thought I had to have it. So I started to save some money on the side. And well, about 2 years into my adventure of saving money, my neighbor Wayne, our neighbor Wayne, right behind us, built a Somerset pole barn right out our living room window. I could see it. He was a fellow woodworker. He bought a Delta Unisaw to put in it, which is like a professional grade table saw. He got a Grizzly wood shaper and had it put in. And then he got a new joiner. He invited me over to see it. It was beautiful. I had pole barn envy. I mean, I had to have one. Unfortunately, about 3 months after he finished his pole barn, Wayne got cancer, I went to see him in the hospital before he died. And the last thing he told me was, Jeff, if you're going to build a pole barn, make sure you build a bigger one. I don't have a lot of regrets in my life, but I wish that I had built the bigger pole barn. I went to the estate sale. I bought that grizzly wood shaper. I mean, they were practically giving the thing away. And I was hauling it up the driveway on a dolly when Colleen came out of the house and said, "What are you going to do with that?" And she must have seen the look in my eye, because she said, "You are not going to build a pole barn. People just load junk into pole barns. Haven't you ever seen that show, American Pickers? Pole barn after pole barn filled with junk. Besides, you can't afford one. The kids need braces." Well, she was right. But a man can dream, and I took Wayne's advice to heart. I went back to the catalog and I decided I would upgrade to the Casper model. It was going to take me a few more years to save for it. It was 30 by 40, insulated walls, heated. It had a heater in it. It even had a bathroom in it. Oh, that would be great. I wouldn't even have to go out behind the barn. And, I mean, it was perfect. I kept saving my money. But about 5 years later, while I was saving, Enrique moved in. Like 5 doors down. Enrique was a fitness guru. He was one of those triathletes, Iron Man. And well, he decided to build the Casper model right after he moved in. It was going up down the street, and he bought a brand new NordicTrack professional grade treadmill and put in it, and it had the nicest Bowflex I ever saw. And he covered the floor with that athletic turf. Oh man, he even put in a climbing wall in one of those lap pools. Oh, it was fantastic. Unfortunately, 6 months after he finished his pole barn, Enrique, mid-marathon on that treadmill, died of a heart attack. Right, fell on the floor mid-stride. I went to the estate sale. I had to get the treadmill. I mean, they were giving the thing away. I know he died on it, but I figured you could clean it up. I was hauling it up the driveway, and Colleen came out. She looked at me. She said, "Well, what are you going to do with that? You are not going to build a pole barn. We don't need a pole barn. Besides, pole barns kill people. Don't you know? I mean, look, Enrique and Wayne, do you want to die?" "Oh, nonsense," I said. "Besides, you can't afford it. The kids got to go to college." Well, she was right, of course. But I went back to the drawing board, and over the years, my pole barn dreams changed. I was now getting the catalog in the mail. And wow, the newest model was the Winchester 36 by 50. And I was going to need that. I mean, I was going to have the workshop and the exercise room. This thing had a bathroom and a guest room and a loft. It was wonderful. But about 2 years ago, while I was saving up the money for it, my friend Mike in the subdivision, he decided to build the Winchester. Mike's a car guy. I mean, he put in a car lift, and he had storage for every one of his vintage automobiles. and he had this Craftsman toolbox that was like a mountain, and it had wheels on it so you could roll it around your shop. I had to have one, I thought. But unfortunately, 7 months after he finished his pole barn, there was a malfunction on that car lift, and apparently Mike hadn't read the directions, and it came down and it crushed him. There was blood everywhere. But I have to tell you, the cleanup was super easy because he had put in the epoxy floor. They just hosed it right down. I went to the estate sale. I was looking at that toolbox, and that's when I looked at the car lift and the toolbox, and I kind of had an epiphany. Colleen must have been right. I mean, there's no way that Mike would have failed on that car lift. He was so detail oriented. And then I got it. It wasn't the car lift malfunction. It wasn't the heart attack. It wasn't cancer. Pole barns are killing people. I mean, really, I went home. I did not buy the toolbox. I wanted to, but I went home and I looked on the computer. Pole barn deaths. There's a support group for pole barn widows. And 3 of the founding members live in my neighborhood. A little over a year ago, I was out of town on a storytelling trip, and I was going to be home early because I caught the early flight. I thought I would surprise Colleen, and when I came into the house, she wasn't there. But I looked out into the backyard, and there was this pile of lumber and metal siding and spray painted on the side. It said pole barn kit. And I thought, no, she's trying to kill me. She wants to get rid of me. When she finally got home, I said, honey, I've seen the error of my ways. I don't need a pole barn. You were right. It just collect junk. I'll never use that. And she says, oh, honey, in her sweetest voice, I'm so glad that you finally came around to my way of thinking. I want you to be around for a long time. I don't want you to go the way of those other men who built pole barns. So you don't mind if we send that pole barn in the backyard back? She looked out there and she goes, oh, that? Yeah, she said, that's not your pole barn. That's Jill and Andy's pole barn. Jill got it for him for his birthday. And I looked at her and I said, really? Really? I didn't even know they were having problems. Well, during COVID, I built a shed. No poles in it, no metal siding, just a place to put my mower and the snow blower. Thank you for listening. I have one piece of advice. If you're thinking of a pole barn, or if someone gets you one for Christmas, just say no. Because pole barns are killers.
Oh my God.
I want to thank my brother-in-law Ted and my sister Chris for the inspiration for the story. I know they're listening. All my family and everybody listening, happy holidays. Thank you.
Oh. Jeff, thank you so much for bringing us home. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
we are That was awesome. We are the TBD Storytellers, and the people performing tonight. My name is Ingrid Nixon. We had Antonio Hushaw. We have Paul Strickland, Norm Brecky, Ann Rutherford, Simon Brooks, Sheila Arnold, and Jeff Doyle.
Yes.
So the TBD Storytellers, woohoo! And what we'd like to say for all of you, we know you had a choice of how to spend your evening, and we are so grateful that you spent it with us. And as we move into the holidays, we all send the warmest wishes to you. And we didn't rehearse this at all, but maybe the TBD Storytellers can say to our wonderful audience that we are wishing you well.
Wishing you well.
Wishing you well.
Well,
Thank
with
you.
you.
We will take December off, but please join us again in January. The last Tuesday is when we'll be coming to you. But wishing you all well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you, TBD.